when we owned pharmacies, we knew that we needed to be competitive on our Tylenol with Walmart. If Walmart's selling Tylenol for $5 and we're selling it for $8, we may sell a few bottles of Tylenol to a motivated mom, but Walmart's going to get the most of the sales. So if we want to be competitive, we got to buy better. And so we always look to do, doesn't always have to be value add. Sometimes you have a stressed out sellers and it's the seller that's stressed, not the property.
That happens, sure.
Right? The stress doesn't always mean the property's beat up. It
Yeah.
just means maybe the situation is.
You're listening to the Accredited Investors Only podcast, presented by Accredited Life.
All right, Stuart, welcome to the show. How you feeling today?
Hey, I'm feeling great, glad to be here, and just really honored to be here. It's a great opportunity. Thank you.
Hey, I appreciate you being here and talking to us. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. Let's start with introducing yourself. I always like to hear the guests introduce themselves in their own words. So, Stuart, who are you? What do you do? Why are you here? All that kind of stuff.
Okay, so my name is Stuart Gethner. I am from Chicago, Illinois, went to pharmacy school in St. Louis, got tired of the cold weather and moved to sunny Phoenix, Scottsdale, Arizona.
Okay.
And it's been a great gig. So the challenge that we have here is we can't shovel sunshine like we used to shovel snow back in Chicago and such. And as I mentioned, I went to pharmacy school. So in my previous life, I'm a pharmacist. I used to own pharmacies out here in the Phoenix area, and always really wanted to become involved in real estate investing. So had a chance to sell my pharmacies in 2012, and have been doing this full time ever since.
Wow. Very nice. Wow. What was the catalyst for that? Was real estate always on the mind, or
Yeah.
how'd you get into it?
So, Pete, when I was a kid growing up in Chicago, I used to watch these new things called infomercials, and there was a guy on his name was Dave Delgado, and a guy named Carlton Sheets, and
Yeah.
would talk about buying real estate with no money down. And Dave Delgado would be on the beaches in Hawaii, surfing all day and collecting his rent checks at night. And I said, man, I think that's for me.
Yeah.
So I watched them and bought some of the programs and realized it's not as easy as you think, but it's certainly been a great run.
Wow. What was the do you remember the first introduction? What's been like the evolution from when you started to where you're at today?
So I started when I was working for Walgreens as a pharmacist, and bought my very first rental property, and thought I could scale it from there. So bought another SFR and another SFR. And over time, I just kind of realized, using the economies of scale, that buying 5 water heaters or 10 water heaters, you're going to get a better price from Home Depot or Lowe's.
Yeah.
So I started getting into multifamily and just kind of grew the business from there.
Gotcha. So, what in the early days there? You see, it sounds like you kept your job. I mean, you didn't just leave it all and say, "All right, I'm going to do this full time." You were practical, right? You you were realistic. You kept the job. You were doing it on the side. Yeah, I'm sure too. Like, managing single families with a full time job is a pain in the butt as well, right? So,
Yeah, so I manage my own properties, and I went to real estate school. I took the school test.
Mm.
I chose not to become an agent or a realtor. I just wanted to learn the rules to play by, because investors like us, many times we play outside the box. And when you're in the agent world, you got to play inside the box with your
Yeah.
broker. So we do a lot of creative financing, buy direct from sellers and such. But I've really enjoyed the opportunities it has provided for me, and focusing on more of the passive cash flow. When I started versus where I'm at now, I've done wholesaling, I did fix and flips. I know, kind of climbed that ladder, if you will, and just realized that true wealth is created by buying and holding.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, let's get into that. Before we do, was there anything that you learned as a pharmacist and the skills you have there? Because I always ask people this, because I think sometimes it can be intimidating if you're coming from another world, and talk about going from being a pharmacist to being a real estate, right? I think it could be an inspiring story. Was there anything you learned during your time as a pharmacist, any skills you created or anything like that that you feel like helped you, that you brought into your day-to-day business or anything like that? Was there any crossover? Or?
That's a great question. I'd say the number one thing that sticks out in my mind is the ability to communicate and talk with people, especially when someone has a medical condition and they look to their pharmacist for advice.
Mhm.
First of all, pharmacists are free, right? You don't have to pay a copay to go talk to your pharmacist.
Mhm.
and they have they don't have a dog in the fight. If I'm going to recommend a product for you, I have your best interest in mind, not so much my wallets.
Mm.
So being able to communicate with people, building that trust,
Mm.
because over time, as I've gotten into the raising capital world, people, and I also had a chance to teach for 15 years at a local RIA, and I always make the joke that of all the business plans that I've looked, and we do that for free, not one business plan, Pete, ever said, um, I'm going to get divorced and go into a Great Depression and go file bankruptcy.
Sure.
And not one business plan said, my business partner is going to drain the bank account in the
Yeah.
middle of the night.
Yeah.
But that happens. So really the trust that people have to not just invest in my projects, but they really invest in me. I think that was a skill set that carried over for my pharmacist days.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, in the back of my mind. I wasn't sure if there was anything else from a medical or pharmaceutical perspective that would cross over. But I was
Sure.
thinking, you talk to a lot of people. It's a people business. And whether you're raising capital or you're dealing with tenants and that kind of thing too, it's just that's a skill that's very important in this business. And I feel like you can always find success on a team and through your own dealings when you have that skill set. So talk to me about the deals you're doing now. Like, what do you have a certain buy box, that you're out looking for? Are you an operator raising capital for your own deals versus for others and all that kind of stuff? So what do you look for? What do you like? Paint a mental image, of the kind of properties so we can all kind of get there in our heads.
Sure. So I'm an operator. I raise capital. I've done a Reg D fund, just done some private capital, some private lending and such.
Mhm.
And our box is going to be multifamily and usually in the 20 to 50 unit range. So up to 10 to 20 million.
Yeah.
We're going to, we finally got a chance to expand being in the Phoenix Scottsdale area. This is where it started. So my home base, but I've been fortunate enough to find opportunities in Cincinnati, Ohio, opportunities in Troy. So we've expanded. And one of the things that I learned doing this business is when, when I have a problem, property management companies make money. So if I have a vacancy, they make money. If I have a leaky faucet, they make money. And I learned this lesson. I did a condo conversion in Las Vegas many years ago, and I hired a property management company. And I swear they must have had a plumber who was out of work because every other month I'm getting a bill for a leaky faucet, 100
Mm.
feet up.
Oh my
Clogged
God.
toilet, $250. Oh,
Yeah.
this mold, we got to knock out. And I can't just go there like I would down the street to see if I was being taken advantage of.
Mm.
So the lesson I learned is when we raise capital, we do deals, I do all the admin in-house. So
Nice.
we'll have boots on the ground, but I'm in charge of all the opportunities. I don't mark them up. If a place needs to be relet, I don't charge a fee. So
Mm.
my investors really get the highest return that they can. And I think that's the way that we should run our business. So
Yeah.
my investors are very happy with me.
Yeah, I bet. What does that entail, from a team perspective or from your time or something like that? I mean, because I feel like there's benefits and drawbacks, right, to doing your own property management. And I think at a certain level of scale too. I mean, I think for some people, it's the right move. It makes sense. I mean, they can maybe learn some things and stuff like that, see how things are supposed to get done. And sometimes you learn the best by, like you said, maybe things not happening. You can learn by, things not necessarily going the way they should or something like that. So what are some of the challenges you have faced with that side of the business, and what are some of those takeaways where you say to yourself, like, this is worth continuing doing, and this was a light bulb kind of moment that you're going to stick with that and all.
Sure. So for us, anything, maybe 20 to 25 units or below, we feel very comfortable being able to do that in-house.
Mhm.
Once you start hitting 30 and above, we'll have a property manager on site that works for us, not a property management company.
Mhm.
We'll have a maintenance person that works for us,
Mhm.
not the property manager. So we're, trying to control all the strings as best as we can. To say that everything goes 100% perfect is not
Sure.
true with anything, right?
Right. Yeah.
But we are able to keep our costs down. There's two ways to make money that I've learned, right? One is you can raise prices, but you can only do that so much with rents in some communities. And the other is to cut expenses.
Mm.
And so I'm in charge of keeping the expenses as low as we can to offer the highest yield.
Mm. Now, the property manager, or maintenance guy, are they like, do they live there typically? Is it somebody that maybe is getting a break on rent or something like
Yes.
that? Or okay,
Great question. Yeah, yeah. We'll do 50% rent And
Nice. Yeah.
depending on the tasks that are involved, we'll pay for all the supplies. They can bill us hourly if it
Mhm.
becomes a big job and they need assistance.
Mhm.
At some point in time, you have to trust your people,
Sure.
the confidence and the trust in them, and that just comes with time. There's no magic to that.
Mhm.
And we've just been fortunate to vet out as best as we could and to say, to give you a horror story just to show you that I'm not perfect and I know nobody is. We spent, true story, $4,000
Mm.
rehabbing a one bedroom, one bath, about a 400 to 600 square foot apartment in Cincinnati.
Wow.
Right. So talk about
What happened there? How many? What was the reasoning for that?
the turnover took so long. So obviously the property was left in shambles.
Mhm.
So to say that it was in excellent shape was not true.
Mhm.
But not being able to trust the guy that was in charge of the rehab,
Mm.
and oh well, it was very similar. I'm sure you've heard the story of the sweater that has the thread.
Oh,
It's
sure. Yeah.
thread, and then the button comes off, and then you
Yeah.
right. So well, we had
Keeps
a little bit
going,
of
right?
leak. We had a little bit of leak in the wall unit for the AC, and the water dripped. So we had to remove some of the flooring panels. Oh, you look under the flooring panels, and there was some mold growing.
Mm.
Oh, the mold spread, and then it went to the underfloor. So, you
Mhm.
know, learned, and with my property manager that was there, she was doing the best she could under the circumstances. But that's the lesson that we learned. I mean, that's
Yeah.
sometimes I learn more from my mistakes than I do
Sure.
from successes.
Yeah, 100%, right? I mean, you look at them differently. You probably spend more time analyzing them and thinking them over. They're keeping you up and and that kind of thing. So that makes a lot of sense. So they're usually dedicated to just that property. Do you have any like property managers that are across a few different properties, or like what's the location wise? Like if you're in
So
Phoenix.
yeah, so for Cincinnati, our property manager covers all the units that we have in Cincinnati, about
Oh,
40,
okay.
44.
Okay.
So they
Hmm.
still cover all of them, and they're not all under one roof.
Hmm.
One's on McGregor, one's on Washington, one's on Grand, one's on Florence.
Hmm.
So but she takes care of all those. The maintenance guy also, he's able to help us with all those, and he will need he so I always call him one and a half. We need about one and a half maintenance guys. So
Yeah.
he'll have an assistant that works with him occasionally, and then there's always those people that you need when the job gets too big.
Yeah.
Whether it's a big, and one of the things I learned being now in the Midwest, as opposed to being here in the Phoenix Scottsdale area, some of those buildings that we have in Cincinnati, they were built in like the early 1900s.
Mm.
So you have challenges of pipes and freezing pipes and rusting pipes that we really don't have here in the Phoenix
Sure.
area. We have different problems, but so just learning the makeup, the challenges, and keeping the costs under control. That's my job,
Yeah.
and that we strive to do our best.
Well, that was a great transition. 'Cause what I was going to ask you, some of the differences between what you see in a market like Phoenix versus what you see in a market like, Cincinnati, you mentioned, and all. So, how has that been? I mean, because Phoenix is a market that has had I would think the supply, um, in Phoenix is a lot different than the supply in Cincinnati, right? You mean over the last
Yep,
couple of years, a lot of new units have come online in
no
Phoenix and
question.
all. Yeah.
No question. So we have a tremendous amount of growth in Phoenix. We are now the fifth largest city in the United States. We
Wow.
kind of vacillate and trade places with you in Philadelphia.
Yeah, really.
We do. And what I've learned is most of the units being built right now are A and B class property, mainly A class property. So what we look for, many times we'll look for value add. If we're looking to park some money, we'll do something where it's already been rehabbed. But I think the big difference is, and what I've learned is the rents.
Hmm.
So the rents on a 2-1, maybe in the Cincinnati area or Troy, 1,000 to 1,200. We're parked at about 1,800 here in the Phoenix area. Scottsdale is going to be a little higher, 24 to 2,600.
Okay.
So just learning the cash flow and making sure that we're able to give the return that we are expecting.
Hmm.
And those are the big differences. The clientele similar, the people are similar, their needs are similar. Here, we're gonna in the summertime when the air conditioning goes out and it's 115,
Mm,
that's and we got to get on that right away, as opposed to a leaky faucet.
sure.
In Cincinnati, it's when it's minus 10 degrees,
Mm,
and it goes out.
yeah.
Well, right. So just difference in the climate and such, but still keeping the rents as best as we can. Pete, we ask our tenants to do three things: one, pay their rent on time; two, take care of the place;
Mm.
And three, I know this sounds crazy, but when something breaks, tell us because we want to fix it. And we come across a
That's
lot
a
of
fight.
yeah,
Right.
and a lot of apartment owners they don't fix stuff or tenants don't want to tell you because they broke it themselves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we just want to make sure that we bring to the marketplace a quality product.
Yeah, I've said a million times to my tenants, hey, just tell me. You know what I mean? Don't feel weird about it, or you know what I mean, whether it was your fault or somebody you had over's fault, or whether it was no fault at all. You know what I mean? Just tell me, because they'll turn a $60 problem into a $200 problem, or a $200 problem into a $2,000 problem. Like you
Got
said, if it's water and sitting and mold's going, and you name it, or it starts finding its way into other areas and stuff. So it's just, you just want to know, what's some of the challenges you face with the smaller multis? I always feel like, I have some friends that own some of those, 12 units, 20 units, that kind of thing. And, how much refereeing do you feel that you do between the tenants? They're seeing, they're seeing each other in the hallways. Who's putting the kid's bike out in the hallway, or who's lifting weights? I've got a duplex where it's like, I think the kid was lifting weights at like 2 o'clock in the morning or something, dropping them on the floor. You know what I mean? Like, hey, who's parking in whose spot, all that kind of stuff. So how
Yeah,
much do you feel you deal with that?
we have very similar stories. I got one where one of my tenants is there's some stray cats in the area. So every
Mm,
report gets up and he waters the sidewalk and he waters the stairs to try to get rid of the smell. And then
yeah.
people they get sludge right in front of
Okay.
the door or,
Sure. Yeah.
or the smell or whatever you have. Um, so this isn't high school, right? We're adults. So my job really isn't to referee the tenants.
Be a
If
psychiatrist.
right? So if they're doing something wrong or illegal, I'll step in.
Yeah.
But if they seem to have a personality problem, that's
Yeah.
not that's not going to fall under my domain.
Yeah.
And I tell all my tenants, we create a community. And
Mm.
so if we feel that someone is not participating well in our community, we will, under the rules, ask them to leave
Yeah.
because that's what we want. We want safe and we want people to feel comfortable, not angst with their neighbors.
Yeah.
So yeah, not to say that it's perfect. It's not perfect, but certainly we're involved to the best that we can like I said, to keep a community in a favorable light.
Yeah, yeah. Do the properties typically have like or do you have washer and dryer? And if you do, are they in a common area, or are they typically in the apartments, or does it just completely vary? Or
We have both. So we have townhomes, 2 bedroom, 2 bath, two-story
nice.
townhomes.
Yeah.
We're with a washer dryer in unit.
In the yeah.
And I'm responsible for those units. And then we have units where we have a common laundry area, and
Yeah.
we're responsible for collecting the quarters and
Yeah.
rolling quarters and bringing them to the bank. So and keeping the laundry room clean.
Yeah.
So not much challenges as far as those are concerned. I think the biggest challenge really is at some point in time, and I know we're going to talk about it, is going to be the rising costs of insurance
Sure.
and rising cost of materials and supplies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, the reason I brought up the laundry is that's always a point of contention, is who's parking laundry in a in a machine for too long and stuff like that. But yeah, rising. Let's pivot to the insurance side of the business. I mean, I feel like that's something that's come up a lot, and maybe in more markets than others, but I feel like nationwide, people are feeling that. What's been your experience, and how are you underwriting for that expense in your existing projects, and then in new projects that you look at and all?
Well, at some point in time, you cannot raise rents higher
Sure.
than people can afford. And
Well,
so
in Phoenix, have you seen rents peel back a little bit, or like where are they at? Because I would think Cincinnati, from what I'm seeing, is still the rents are still appreciating a little bit, right?
I agree with that. And
Okay.
I think in our Phoenix market, I think you're spot on. Over the past 6, 12, maybe 15 months, rents have stabilized and maybe dipped a little bit. And I can say that for a fact because when we have a vacancy, it takes a little longer to turn that unit over.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 2, 3 years ago, I wouldn't even have to put a sign in the ground for
Yeah.
rent. I would just get multiple phone calls, posting on Facebook Marketplace or Zillow or some of the other places, Zumper,
Mm-hmm.
and all those places. But certainly, you want to we want to stay focused on putting the best client in the best unit because for us turnover is expensive and we don't want turnover if we can avoid it.
Sure, sure. What's your screening process look like when it comes to selecting tenants? I love what you said about building a community. I think that's really important, and when you got to think about that when you have those especially the smaller things. And I mean it's just people are going to see each other. They got to be able to get along, and like you said, you don't want to be jamming up your property manager or something like that with those kinds of requests and stuff like that. So how do you build that kind of culture, and community
Sure. Okay, so we screen our tenants. We use a platform. I'm sure you've heard of platforms like Appfolio, Yardi, Rent,
Mhm.
Buy, Buildium. So we use one of those platforms, and they screen for us. And one of our qualifications is, rent to be 25 to 33% of their income,
Yeah.
as well as no prior evictions. Depending on the felony conviction and when it was, someone who's in their 30s or 40s and had a DUI when they was 18. A lot of places are very strict on that. No felonies whatsoever.
Mm.
Uh, you know, um, we'll look at it. And what I found just in my life's experience is that everybody's got a story,
Mm.
right? So, and that's what we start out saying. What's your story?
Yeah.
One of my best tenants. Um, I'm going back a few years. He was driving through. He was driving from Missouri to Michigan. He was going through Illinois. He got pulled over for speeding. He had a loaded pistol in the trunk
Mm.
that was illegal in Illinois, and
Wow.
he had a convicted felony.
Wow.
And nobody would rent to him. We
Oof.
screened him. We were able to see the felony. It was everything he said that it was, and we gave him a second chance.
Mm.
One of my best tenants ever. Too bad
Yeah.
he ended up moving out to Florida. But I think everybody's got a story. You take a look at some of the scenarios. You have an eviction on your profile. Why is that? I was married at the time. I was in an abusive relationship. I ended up having to go to a woman's shelter. And you check out the story. You look at where she's been. Her previous address was a woman's shelter.
Hmm.
So we're able to try to work with people because people have stories. Not everybody's going to have a pristine, clean past. And what we're looking for is quality tenants at the ratio I told about being able to afford the rent. We'll also do Section 8.
Mm.
That was a lesson for me. I bought 14 units up here in Phoenix. I inherited three Section 8 tenants. I thought for the longest time I didn't want to deal with that. I didn't want to deal with those types of the people that were in need. And boy, was I wrong.
Sure.
Uh, some of those people, they're all quality people. It's been an eye opener for me.
Hmm.
And you get market rents. They take care of the place. If they ever get kicked off Section 8, there's a waiting list to get back on.
Sure.
And so I've had much success.
Yeah.
So as I've gone through this journey, I've learned and I've been able to change my mind. And as the market changes, I try to stay on top as best as you can to stay with the curve.
Yeah. I always like to hear that. We do a lot of Section 8, and there's so many misconceptions when it comes to
Yeah.
Section 8. And I get it. Everybody has their horror stories. And
Yeah.
you just saw something on Bigger Pockets the other day. It works on paper, but it doesn't work in reality. And it's just like, let's get into the operations. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure you were doing something stupid on the operational side. You still have to screen a Section 8 tenant just like you would anybody else. Maybe some people don't do that, but it's good to hear you say that because I always feel that's such a common theme with people who've actually done Section 8 versus
Yeah.
people that have just heard stories through the grapevine, or they did one or they inherited one where they didn't have so much control over it because they didn't know, or whatever it may be. So that's always refreshing to hear.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's talk about then like how you structure these deals. And I mean, I feel like a lot of times the smaller multis get structured in like JV opportunities versus like a larger, kind of like a syndication, that kind of thing. So I'm curious to how you structure them, how it changes maybe per the deal and the size and the
It
metrics,
does.
all that kind of stuff.
You're
And
spot on,
talk
Peter.
about that.
It just changed by the deal.
Okay.
So working on a deal right now, not a big deal, about 5.5 million. I did my own capital raise in house. I actually got an individual to be the lender on the deal,
Mm,
and we structured it
nice.
with is it's a 3 to 5 year play. We're buying 20 units that are townhomes, and we're buying them. We're in the process of buying them from an elderly gentleman. So I'm used to talking to sellers directly. I find off-market deals are the best. He's in his mid to late 80s, and so he's still charging rents from 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah,
And
you see that,
properties
yeah.
have been updated for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
So the goal on this is to raise the capital and everybody's going to be guaranteed. We're going to do Class A and Class B shares. Class A shares are my private investors that invest with me. Class B is everyone else, passive, and everyone's going to get a 12% return.
Okay.
So starting with 12% return, and I'm buying them for. So this is in Phoenix, which is a good price, and it just depends where you are in the country. I'm buying them for 200,000 each. They got a price for 240 to 260 in that neighborhood, depending on where you want to be. And once they hit 300, which I think will be take 2 or 3 years, we're going to sell them.
Mm.
But once we sell them, we're going to go back and give everybody an additional, bump them up to 20.2%.
Mm.
And then everything above that will split pro rata. So whatever percentage you have, tier pursue, you're going to get an additional funds. And we think this is a great opportunity.
Yeah.
So one of the things I learned, I guess we could take a step back. One of the things I learned being in pharmacy, because we talked about that already, is, and I learned this is true with any business, many times you make your money when you buy.
Sure.
So when we owned pharmacies, we knew that we needed to be competitive on our Tylenol with Walmart. If Walmart's selling Tylenol for $5 or we're selling it for $8, we may sell a few bottles of Tylenol to a motivated mom, but Walmart's going to get the most of the sales. So if we want to be competitive, we got to buy better. And so we always look to do, doesn't always have to be value add. Sometimes you have a stressed out sellers and it's the seller that's stressed, not the property.
Yeah, it happens, sure.
Right? The stress doesn't always mean the property's beat up. It
Yeah.
just means maybe the situation is. And so we look for those opportunities. We don't mind working with brokers. I don't have issues with brokers. My lovely wife is a realtor, so everybody needs to make a living.
Yeah.
We do our direct marketing, and after you've been around for a while, somehow deals kind of, I don't want to say fall in your lap, but people know who you are.
Sure.
They reach out to you as opposed to you doing a ton of marketing. But we still do both. We still
Yeah.
do our networking. We still stay in touch with our investors, our clients, opportunities. And just because I learned this, I'm sure you have as well, Peter, just because a seller says no today,
Mm.
doesn't mean they're going to say no in 45 days.
Yeah, well, I have my license, and the first broker I hung my license with, he's a good friend of mine until this day, and he really, the calls, I mean, there were people he would call for years, and they had bought a small apartment complex in town here. I think he was calling the person for 15 years. I mean, and he was the kind of guy, he would have a stack of papers on his desk that he would print off, with a phone number, the property on it from the MLS sheet, that kind of thing, with a phone number on it. And he would keep it there, and he would go through that stack almost on a weekly basis, and a daily basis, really, and just be calling and just staying in touch with people. And it takes that level of consistency, and not a lot of people are going to do that. And I think that's another really great point that you bring up. Because in the larger properties, 150, 200 units, a lot of time, not that people don't do direct to seller marketing there and there isn't opportunities there, but a lot of times they tend to go through brokers and all. Whereas I love what you're saying here, where you have, it's a little bit, the off market deals are a little bit more prevalent, right? And you kind of compound the reputation over time when you're looking for that kind of stuff. And two, if you have other entities and stuff like that other properties are titled in,
Yep.
people tend to find you through there and send you stuff and all. We see it on the SFR side all the time, where properties come up on the street, the wholesaler, whoever, the agent finds, an entity connected to you, and they, we want to buy this one 2 doors down or something like that. So great way of doing business and finding deals. What would you say it looks like you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, you took a story right out of my mouth. We were when I was doing the single family residences, we bought one on 47th Place here in Phoenix, and while I was actually at the property, a neighbor across the alley next door walked over, and she said to me, "Do you know? Can I speak to the owner?" And it's like, "Well, then it's me." And she said, I have the house across the alley next door. My parents owned that home.
Mm.
I lived in that home.
Yeah.
And now my kids and grandkids are living in that home, and I can't get them to pay me rent.
Yeah.
I'd love to sell it to you. And I said, I'd love to buy it. So it was a smoking deal for me. So
Yeah.
you're right. Just sometimes just being in the game or being at the property, just being actively out there, people get to know who you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mhm.
I love that. I actually, that broker I was just talking about, he had a story where he had a listing. He just got the listing. It was a commercial. This is a commercial brokerage, commercial property right on a main street, beautiful property. I think it was, I don't know, drugstore or something like that. It was right next to a car dealership. So he talks to the owner, he gets the listing, and he goes right next door and he walks into the car dealership and he says, I want to talk to the owner. I got an opportunity for him. And that guy bought the property. So it gets both sides of the commission. It was literally the next guy he talked to. And I think a lot of times people forget that. And I mean, they just forget what can happen kind of right in your backyard and all that kind of stuff. And I went to Temple University and acres of diamonds from
What a great story.
right. I mean, that's
thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what always makes me think of that. Sometimes it's
everything you need
right
in your
there.
backyard.
Exactly.
Sure.
Talk to me about the strategy, though, like just to get a little deeper in when you're finding deals that way. Do you you have a market, that you've identified, obviously, like you said, Cincinnati and Phoenix and Troy and all, and then you have this buy. You want 20 to 50 units and all. So you kind of go, you're calling the owners in that case and all, and sending mailers and stuff.
So our strategy is direct mail and calling.
Okay.
And here's a lesson that I learned that I'm happy to share. Go maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, I had a stack of offers on my desk. They were like this high, maybe 40, 50, 60 offers. And what do you do with them? This is before we were scanning everything and doing everything digital, DocuSign, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked my lovely bride, I said, can you just do me a favor? Can you just go through these offers and see if they sold, and if they did, what'd they sell for? There's what do you do with them? So she went through 40 of them. We had a stack higher than that, but she did 40. And she came back and she said, Stuart, I want you to know that 2 of them sold below what you offered. And 2 of them sold for maybe about 5,000 to 10,000, a little bit more than you offered. And I thought to myself, gosh darn it, that's been sitting on my desk for months, maybe a year. And if I would have just maybe followed through or called back and just see what their interest was, that would have been a better ratio of success than just cold calling and selling out letters. So that's what we follow through every 30 to 45 days with previous offers. And like I said, people who are not interested yesterday are interested today. We got 36 units in Ohio that we're working on right now. And the seller was never interested in seller financing. He wanted top dollar, not interested in seller financing. Followed through with him earlier this week. And he said, I had a talk with my accountant. And he told me if I sold it for that much money, I'm going to get hammered on taxes. So I'm thinking about seller financing.
Sure.
Like, I'm your guy. So the money, it really isn't a follow through, and making sure that we talk to the right people. And you never know when the right time is. So that's why, you'll hear people say the money's in the follow through. So staying in touch, being able to pick up the phone, it's me. And, sometimes they don't want to talk to you. Sometimes they just tell you, I'm still not interested. But I've learned, I don't know if you've heard of this book called The 4 Agreements, but in the 4 Agreements, one of the agreements is don't take anything personal. So that took me a little while to get through that one. But
that's a daily fight for me mentally, right? It's so hard. It's so hard to be able to do that, right?
So don't take it personal. Just put them on the bottom of the pile. And when their name comes up to the top of the pile again, and then they may because you never know what's going on their side of the fence.
Exactly.
Maybe they just broke up with, maybe their dog passed away. Maybe they got a leaky water heater that's flooded somewhere. You just don't know what's going on in there. So to think it's about me, not about me. And I learned that. And with that lesson, I've been able to follow through and just keep on calling.
Yeah, that's gold. That's gold. If you get anything out of this episode, that is gold right there. Because like you said, you just have no control over what's going on in their life. And you never know who they're going to talk to. Because chances are they're talking to other people and maybe they're sussing out other opportunities and things like that. And they end up finding out they're not what they wanted to get. Just wasn't, it wasn't possible. Because it's always funny how buyers, sellers at one point were buyers, right? They bought the building at one point, but when they go to sell, they just completely forget all, what it's like, to be the buyer and to have to make money on it and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes they need to feel the pain, and they need to realize that their expectations aren't necessarily going to be met and all. So if you keep following up, you might hit it on the right day.
Yeah. So we use the expression, let's let the marketplace educate them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, love it. Well, it kind of off of that line of questioning there, it leads into another question I had for you was with investors, because I'm sure that's another one too. I think, with investors, it takes time, right, to build the trust,
Yes.
to get an offering,
Yeah.
a fund or a syndication or a
Yeah.
partnership that makes sense. So I'm sure you take that same philosophy when you're dealing with investors and all as well.
So yeah, that's a great question, and I'm happy to share what worked for me.
Mm.
Right, what worked for me. I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. So
Okay.
y'all know Tony Robbins. He's not a rah rah guy. He's a mental get in your head guy, and he talks about marketing yourself through education.
Mm.
So I learned that when I was teaching for the RIAs, owning pharmacies at the time. Everybody wanted to take me to lunch. If I would have gone to lunch with everybody that wanted to take me to lunch, I'd still be with people today. But I couldn't because I was owning these businesses and I had to get back. And so I started putting on my own events, my own educational events.
Mm.
And what I do is we started doing them on Meetup and we do them virtual. It's called the Networking REI. And
Mm.
I'll speakers and we'll do some in person. I did one last year. I brought in one of the authors of Rich Dad Poor Dad. Her name is Sharon Lecter. She worked with Robert Kiyosaki. She retired. And my speakers, the people who come on and speak on my stage, they're not allowed to sell. There's no selling. Okay. And we're just educating. So whenever I put on a webinar, whatever I do, I'll always start off by saying, put away your checkbook, your debit cards, your credit cards. There's nothing for sale, even if you wanted to buy something.
Yeah.
And so people tend to relax. And
Sure.
so we give them quality information, we educate. And then Jim Rohn once taught me a third of the people are going to take what you do and they're going to go do it. And the third of the people are going to decide it's not for them, and that's okay. And the other third of the people that might want my assistance or want to work with us in some capacity, those are the people I'm looking for. But I educate, I let them come to me, I build rapport, I take time. I'll never call you, Peter, and say, man, I need your 100 grand by Thursday. No, nobody likes that.
Yeah.
That's what we're working on. It's a few months out. Do you have any interest? Would you like me to keep you in the loop?
Yeah.
We'll get the same probably you get. Oh, I wish you would have called me last week. I just had to pay for my kids' tuition, or
Sure.
I
Sure.
kids' braces, or whatever that is. And that just was not the right time or the right fit at that moment. And we'll continue to stay in touch with them. But like I said earlier, looking at all the business plans, they all have happy endings, but they don't all end happy. So at the end of the day, whatever your OM looks like, people end up, in my opinion, investing in me.
Mm.
So I have their confidence. I have their trust. I'm transparent. And do things always work out the way they're planned? No, but you wouldn't know it unless you had a plan. So we
Yeah.
have to start somewhere. Here's the plan, and then it's like sailing a boat. Anybody can sail that boat on a crystal smooth lake. It's when the storm comes in,
Yeah.
they look for someone with what we call a little gray hair. And so I'm happy to say I got a little gray hair. I've been there, done that,
Sure.
and I know how to steer the ship through a storm.
Yeah, yeah, I take pride in that. I'm 32, and yeah, I'm getting it. For people that aren't that are listening but not watching, I'm getting the gray hair. 10 years of real estate has done it to me.
Well, you know
But
what? You've done an amazing job in a very short period of time. You still have the horizon of time. Yeah, I expect great things out of you. You should be very proud of yourself.
I appreciate that. Which actually it leads great into what I was going to say next. Rhea, there's such a divide, right, of people who are kicking ass and just doing what they want to do, and then there's the people that are showing up for the free food and the conversations and all, right? I mean, so what would you say?
Uh-huh.
Like, what's the advice to somebody that wants to get into this business? Like we were talking about before, who the audience is, and also like, say you're accredited investor, you have some money you want to invest. You're not sure, active, passive. What do you want to do? What would your advice be?
First of all, that's a great question. And there's always people who are getting ready to get ready. So
Yeah.
if you're serious about getting ready, you certainly want to look at the OMs. You certainly maybe want to investigate. You do your due diligence who you're going to be doing business with. We could probably both share stories of people who have gotten taken advantage of, got ripped off,
Sure.
but that person was on someone's stage or on someone's podcast,
Yeah.
or they wrote this book. And so, I thought they were going to be. So you want to look at the past, what I call the track record of their successes and their failures. To say that I've never had a failure would not be telling the truth.
Mm.
Not right. And that's the
That's
truth.
usually a red flag, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if you're just getting started, then I would consider whether it's a consultant or a mentor or someone that you know that's already done it,
Mhm.
will probably help you learn underwriting a little faster than
Yeah.
trying to do it yourself. Now, I'll agree with you that you can go on YouTube University and probably learn anything you want about real estate investing, anything you want
Yeah.
for free. And there's probably some very good quality information out there. Not all of
Sure.
it
Sure.
sales, sales, sales. But at some point in time, you need to have us, whether
Yeah.
it's a cup of coffee or on a Zoom call like we're doing now. But you know, let's have a conversation. What are you looking for? What's realistic,
Yeah.
and what's your comfort level for risk, and
Yeah.
what's your time horizon? Because I think those things, time horizon and risk, are one of the big things that investors look at, and that's where I would start. Working with someone like you, who has done this before, or your colleagues, because you have that track record and you're accessible. People
Yeah.
can reach out to you. You'll answer the phone. You'll call them back. Good news or bad news, you're accountable. And I think that's what people want. People that are accountable, that are stand up and have integrity.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think that's right on point. Great advice. And to your point, you can, it's like the internet has made things more accessible. You can Google things and you're not going to the library, things like that now. But at the same time, there always gets to be a point where you have to go beyond that, and you have to take action and, to pick up the phone and talk to somebody, to go to, the local events and networking events and things like that, meet with people in person. I feel like what you can pick up on a conversation sometimes is just so much better than what you may or may
I
not
agree.
find, or
I
it's
agree.
right. It's just it goes a long way, and then I'm sure you'd agree. Experience comes with action and
Yeah.
taking those steps and all that kind of stuff. You had said it before. You learn a lot from the mistakes,
Mhm.
and especially if you take time to reflect on what worked, what didn't work, all that kind of stuff. So it's I think that's an important thing too. You just gotta act.
And so I'll add this too, Peter, if that's okay. And that's because we're
Mhm.
talking to accredited investors. And when I first started, to be honest, I went to a lot of networking groups. And what I learned about, and there's nothing wrong with networking groups. What I learned was everybody wants you to buy their stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
The guy wants you to buy his pens.
Mm.
She wants you to use it for a mortgage company. He
Yeah.
wants you to use it for insurance.
Yeah.
It's not where I'm going to find 100 grand.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so and so you want to put yourself in a position, we call it a sandbox. Where are those people that are similar, looking for similar investments that have the 100, 200, 250, whatever that
Hmm.
is, where are they hanging out? And if it's in your neck of the woods, they're probably not hanging out on a golf course in the wintertime.
Hmm.
So are they in the, and so those are the people you want to hang out with. And they don't have to be all real estate driven,
Mm.
because people who
Sure.
have a couple bucks, they probably have diversified their portfolio, and some of it may be in bonds, the market, crypto, and some of it may be in real estate. And
Right.
so, being involved with people that are in similar like, nothing against the RIAs, but my experience has been, and please share yours. That's where kind of the beginners go to start
Sure.
learning about real estate investing, wholesaling,
Yeah.
fix and flip. But if
Yeah.
you're looking for accredited investors, you're looking to put deals together, uh, different type of networking groups, if you will, different types of clientele. And that was a challenge for me to learn. I
Sure.
got frustrated for years, joining this one, going to this one, go to this one. And I mean, it's nice to have lunch, and they're very nice people, but no
Yeah.
one's writing me a check.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking for, and that's my advice is, if you're going to go in a sandbox, make sure you're in the right sandbox.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think sometimes that there's a validation thing, there's a content thing. If you're doing stuff online and meeting people online, especially if they're out of state, they're not going to have a chance to necessarily meet you in person or something like that. Then when you go to those events and you take pictures and you speak and all that kind of stuff, and you have it on social media, it means something. It's like, okay, you're active in your local community, all that kind of stuff. But to your point, is it going to be a place that's going to solve all your capital raising, needs and stuff like that? Chances are not, and now I'd be curious that when you set up your own group, was that a way to kind of attract some of those people to you? Yeah, I mean, because I always feel like that when you have your own group and you're running your own thing, it gives you an authority, kind of an expert. It makes it different, right? Would you say
No
that was a game changer from a
That was a game
fundraising
changer.
perspective, or?
And that was the game changer. And going back to the Tony Robbins mentality, raising funds, raising a community,
Mm.
but by educating, and
Mhm.
that's what I did, and continue to do. And we'll bring in speakers that will talk about raising capital. We'll bring in speakers that will talk about certain funds and the difference between the funds. Again, Sharon Lecter talked about Rich Dad Poor Dad. She had a great story, I'm sure we all know the book, but she had just gotten, I don't want to use the word divorce, but separated from Kiyosaki, and her phone rang.
Hmm.
And this was right when caller ID was just kind of starting, right? And she tells the story that it said the White House. She's like, someone's playing a prank on me. I'm not gonna answer it, right?
Sure.
And so again, phone kept ringing the White House. She said, fine, I'll answer it. Well, believe it or not, it was the White House. And President Bush was starting
Oh my
a
God.
committee on financial literacy.
Oh,
And
wow.
wanted her to be a part of that.
Wow.
She served under Bush and Obama.
Mm.
And so just hearing her stories about being out there and learning some of the lessons that she learned over time, who she hobnobbed with, and some of the stories she told is very insightful. And you can extrapolate that and to put them into into your life. And so for people to come to my event and pay $100 a ticket and be able to listen to her stories, and of course we had other speakers as well, they got their value. Now, whether
Sure.
they want to work with me or not, that's up to them. Did I
Yeah.
let them know that I was available? Of course. And that's why I put it on. But there was no selling. You know, when I meet you for the first time, I'm not asking you to write your check. I might
Sure.
you're a good fit for me.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so yeah, so just being present, being on a stage, having a stage, and then introducing other people, it kind of makes you the expert. But I'll also speak during my presentation, talk about some of the projects, so people know what we have going on in our offices as well.
Hmm. That's awesome. Well, Stuart, this has been a great conversation. You know, so many golden nuggets throughout, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. For listeners that want to learn more about you, get involved, you know, all that kind of stuff, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, obviously the proverbial website, contact Stuart, CONTAC, contact Stuart, STUART, STEWART, either one. I'll even give them my phone number, 480-443-4500, 480-443-4500. I'm sure you have show notes. You probably put my
Yes.
email address in the show
Throw
notes.
it in there.
But one of the things I pride myself on, and I've learned this through Sharon Lecter, answer your phone.
Yeah.
And so when people call, I know this sounds crazy, I answer the phone.
Right.
You never know. It could
Yeah.
be spam, someone tried to sell you on Medicare or crypto or something, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be someone that's interested in learning more about working with you. And so if people reach out, I promise that we will have a conversation.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, we share that in common. And to go back to that broker, I remember the first thing he said to me was, if you want to be successful in this business, pick this up. Yeah, it was just like, so many people don't, and you will stand out above the rest. And if you can't pick it up at the time, as I'm sitting here and my phone is ringing, get back to them as soon as possible, because it's just so many people don't do it. And I've experienced it all across the board with investments that I was looking at making, with deals you want to buy, things that the people that don't get back to you, it's unbelievable. So if you want to stand out, you know, that's a way to do it. And a lot of times it could be the White House on the other line, right? You don't know what that opportunity is.
No, and you make a great point, and that is, since you don't know what it is, you know, when I was a kid growing up, when the phone rang, it was exciting.
Yeah.
Someone called, right? Now,
Sure.
if you don't know who the
Yeah.
number is,
Yeah.
not pick it up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, world's changed.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I had a call earlier today, and it didn't say spam, and I thought the number looks familiar. Let me pick it up, and it was somebody who had a couple deals they were looking to sell. You know, I mean, they're working with somebody, and so they emailed me the stuff. I'm looking at it now, so you never know. You know what I mean? So it's I always, if I can pick it up, I pick it up, and if I don't, I always get back to somebody that day. Really, I'm the kind of guy where it bothers me. Like I can't not call somebody back. Like it bothers me. So all right, I love it. Thank you so much, Stuart. I really appreciate you being here.
Peter, thanks for having me. I've been really honored that you invited me as a guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you.